Welcome back to the Crash the Pond podcast. It is a Monday, October 21st edition of the show. And Jake, doing it on Monday for I think the second week in a row?
Yeah, we're back to our old stomping grounds here. Who knows how long we'll stay here for? I feel like the episodes this year, this season,
Just all over the place.
they're gonna bounce around. We're not gonna have a set date. We're gonna try our best to stay on Tuesdays as best we can, but I mean, this week there's a game Tuesday, so we gotta bounce around. We figure it out, and just so happens that after the game last night, it made the most sense to get a podcast in today to hopefully calm the masses a little bit. The way I put it on Twitter this morning was hopefully we can just provide a little bit of perspective here, because I wasn't on Twitter that much yesterday, but from looking at it briefly, from being in Discord, the proverbial pitchforks were out last night.
They were.
And someone mentioned to me to look at the Ducks Reddit. The Ducks Reddit had, I think, 4 or 5 different posts about firing Greg Cronin and that the Ducks need to fire Cronin. We've had people ask us how much longer is on his contract. Let's just say that after last night, the reactions maybe were a bit on the emotional side.
Yeah, I don't want to gaslight people and say, oh, you're freaking out, your emotions don't matter, blah, blah. Because I think that people want to see progress. They want to see this team improve, and we're 5 games in, and there's been nights where things haven't really felt that different from years past. And I think that losing Sunday night to LA 4-1, although really it was 2-1, 2 empty netters for LA,
Yeah.
but losing 4-1 regardless in a game where you kind of came up pretty short if you're the Ducks, it makes sense for people to be upset, to be pissed. I get all of that. I mean, especially if you went out and spent a pretty penny on new jerseys and got all excited about this new era of Ducks hockey, only for it to be kind of like the same old, same old. I get it. But there is a level of just, we got to take a deep breath and figure things out here. Because I just, to lead things off, I'll just say it's not as bad as it looks. Not even close.
Yeah. And kind of just to start there, I guess. We're 5 games in.
Yes.
We're 5 games into the season. And I think my overall kind of taking the 1,000 mile above view, that's definitely not how it's worded.
I think it's 10,000.
10,000, whatever. Regardless.
I think it's 40,000 because that's
40.
the height of a plane, the altitude of a plane, but regardless.
There we go.
More than 1,000.
If I look at this team so far, I think you and I would both agree the first game against the Sharks was not great, but I think there are some certain things that you could look at and kind of throw that away. The week-long layoff, first game of the season, it seemed like their passing was just off in that game, and things weren't clicking. It seemed like it was definitely a first game of the season. But you look at the game against Vegas. They played a good game at 5-on-5 against Vegas. Special teams are still going to be an issue. We'll get to that eventually. But just looking purely at 5-on-5, I think they played a really good game against Vegas. Utah, same thing. A solid game against Utah. They were able to generate offense. That was a game where they really were able to get the offense flowing throughout that game. Maybe we're a little bit leaky defensively, but that can happen. And then you have these last 2 games against Colorado, where the Ducks were clearly outplayed. Ryan Strome put it in the sense of it was one of the worst games of the last 2 seasons that the Ducks have played. And then you follow that up with an LA game where for 2 periods, it felt like it was a neck and neck game where it was a low offense game from both teams, but that's kind of the Kings hockey. They stifle you. They really play suffocating hockey. It's hard to generate offense. And both teams were kind of playing that style. The Ducks were really good on in-zone defense. And then couple breakdowns in the third period, and the Kings really capitalized and really started pushing. And so, the Kings deserve to take that one. So we're 5 games in, and if we throw out the first game, the Ducks have had 2 good performances and 2 bad ones. Like, no,
Yeah.
This is not a great situation. This is not a team that's contending for a cup, but that's not what we were expecting from this team. And so I think all in all, when you take that step back and look at that, you'll take that right now. And especially when those 2 kind of worst games were against 2 better teams in the league. And maybe that's the thing for some people out there is they look at LA and they don't necessarily think they're a better team in the league, but you look at their numbers over the last however many years, they've had really good underlying metrics. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league. And so all that kind of leads to say there's work to be done. There's progress that needs to happen and lessons to be learned from that LA game, from the Colorado game, to be able to generate more offense, because that's the biggest issue. But we're 5 games in, and there have been 2 other games where it's the exact opposite, where the Ducks have looked to and generate offense. The Utah game's a prime example of that. And so there's going to be ups and downs within a season, whether it's a good team or a bad, whether you're watching a good team or a bad team. And you kind of have to learn to ride that and figure out kind of how to siphon through the good and the bad to make the most of what the season is. And right now we're so early on that every game feels like such a major situation, but you need to just remember it's so early. It's so early, and we need to see more of this before having any of these massive takes.
And here's the part that I don't think people think about enough, or that they don't want to hear. But if the Ducks were 5-0 and destroying other teams, we would still be saying this is 5 games. It's just 5 games.
It's actually possible that the Ducks could have been 4-1 right now.
Yeah.
Like, the Ducks could have won that game against Colorado. And let's just say they don't allow the empty netter and they score a late goal, game-tying goal against the Kings, and somehow win in overtime. Like, they could be a 4-1 team, and it's the same exact situation as what they are now. Like, it's no different. It's exactly like what you're saying. And so, just perspective.
Well, it's a small sample, and if they were playing extremely well and dominating teams and scoring a bunch of goals, we would still be saying that this could be nothing. This could just be a hot streak that in the wash over 82 games will not really mean anything. And so the flip side of that coin is that you can't just throw out games and say, oh, well, this is part of a small sample, therefore we can't take anything away from it. Like, we still have to look at it and see what trends are emerging, how the pieces are being used, who's performing well, who's underperforming, coaching decisions, because at the end of the day, that's all going to lead to the next outcome and to the next outcome and to the next outcome. And so for me, when I take that view of the Ducks making adjustments and trying to figure this out, I do think that they're already recognizing that some things are not working, particularly offensively. If you look at the last 2 games with LA and Colorado that you talked about, where you're not hitting, did they hit 20 shots on goal in either game? They didn't hit 15 against LA.
I will double check right now on that. But
against
Colorado, they ended up with 19 shots on goal.
Yeah, so barely any shots on net. And so I think that the Ducks have already recognized, hey, we have maybe a little bit of a problem here offensively. And you saw today at the practice. We'll see how this ages, but if you're listening by Tuesday or Wednesday, but it looks as though there's been some shaking up of the lines already. And I don't necessarily hate that, because as much as I would like to see lines be given a chance, I think sometimes you just can tell. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling that something is not working. And we can get into all of those different details, but should we kind of go through the games here and piece them out, unless there's anything else you wanted to touch on here? Just from the 30,000 foot view?
I mean, the 30,000 foot view, special teams also need to get better, both from the penalty kill perspective, and we'll get into the power play.
We could do an entire podcast just on the power play.
You've done some breakdowns, so you have a much more in-depth view of those from having just purely looked at those. But you've kind of brought the point up on those videos that there is signs of progress, there is signs of life for the power play.
Yes.
And there should be a breakthrough at some point coming on it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the home opener, which now feels like forever ago.
Yeah.
It feels like ancient history after the last 2 games, but there was a point in time where fans were real happy because it was opening night. You got the new presentation pregame. You've got the new jerseys. First time in franchise history you're wearing them in a regular season game. And the Ducks win 5-4. And they do it against the Utah Hockey Club. They do it in exciting fashion. Terry gets on the board. Pavel Minchikov, 2 goals. Robbie Fabry gets on the board. And Leo Carlson with a really pretty overtime winner. So, I mean, the floor is yours. What do you want to pick at first in this game?
I think one of the biggest things for me was Pavel Minchikov's performance in this game. Like, he was just an absolute beast all over the ice. This almost felt like a coming out party for him. It felt like he was a legit top pairing defenseman in the NHL. He was all over the ice. Him and Dumoulin were working so well together. I mean, he had his goal that was the pass from Dumoulin, the first one, and then the second goal where it's just him jumping up into the play and putting the puck on net and finding the back of the net. But it just felt like consistently him jumping up into the play, finding the right time to get into the offensive zone. And there were just so many times where he was around the net, and it was, you would have to almost do a double take to make sure that was 34 out there, to that's where he was at. And it feels like everything we heard about Pavel Mintyukov from like Mitch Brown and things like that during his time in junior, about his willingness to jump into the play and how he is really a unicorn of a defenseman in some ways, and just can reinvent the position. It felt like we saw that at times last season, but not consistently. Like, it almost felt like he was still learning the NHL game. And it felt like against Utah, he really brought that type of game out, where we didn't always see that fully last season. And it just really showed how dominant he could be against the team, both physically, because he would break up plays in the defensive zone and then turn it the other way, and then just also being in the offensive zone in dangerous spots to create chances. And so that to me was kind of my big takeaway from this game, just how good Pavel Mintyukov looked.
Yeah, I mean, both of his goals came from inside the slot, and the second one being at the net front, basically. And remember, folks, he's a defenseman. Defensemen don't usually score from close to the net. It's usually going to be a point shot or a one-timer. But to your point on Mintyukov, though, this was like the theory of Pavel Mintyukov fully played out to its maximum extent in one game. I mean, he was everywhere, breaking up plays, getting deep into the offensive zone to prevent and kill exits by the other team, forechecking at times, creating plays with the puck, without the puck. I think that's the biggest separator for me with Pavel Mintyukov, because when I compare him to, let's say, an Olen Zellweger, and I'm sorry, I do this a lot, but I compare these two players because they're kind of on similar tracks, two offensive defensemen, same franchise. I think Olen Zellweger is more skilled. I think Olen Zellweger has better kind of mechanical features in his game. I think he moves better, handles the puck cleaner, shoots it harder. But Pavel Mintyukov, the way he sees the game and the way that he has that motor to where he's going to be disrupting play wherever, it doesn't matter where the play is on the ice, he will be there. His kind of just, his aggressiveness really is what separates him, because it might not always be pretty mechanically. He's not the prettiest, most fluid skater. He's not the fanciest puck handler. He's not the hardest shooter, but it's that mindset of, I can go get any puck. I can go win any battle. I can go make any play, that in a game like this against the Utah Hockey Club, which we should note is not an elite team, he can wreak havoc. And once he's able to hone that and harness that against the good teams, because let's be honest, against LA and
he didn't play against LA, to be clear.
Or sorry, yeah, it's against Colorado. It wasn't quite the same, right? And so there's going to be an ebb and a flow there. He did have a hot start last season, but he's looking good. He's looking really good. I mean, we were texting about it after that game, but he looked like the Ducks' best player. Yeah, in that, like not even their best defenseman, just their best player. And I think another interesting offshoot from the Mintyukov performance is how good Brian Dumoulin looked next to him.
Yes.
Brian Dumoulin's puck moving is way, way, way better than I expected.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it makes sense. Like, we talked about when they acquired him, but Dumoulin has always kind of played against more highly skilled puck-moving type guys. I mean, you look at when he was on the top pairing in Pittsburgh, he was playing with Chris Letang. And the one question I think with Dumoulin is, it's funny, I think the Ducks broadcast mentioned this, but whether he could play the right side, because the Ducks broadcast mentioned he had only played the right side last season, and that was the first time he had ever played it. But you get a guy like that that's a veteran that is able to see the game, you kind of put the trust in him to be able to play his offside and be able to make plays, especially if you're putting him with a guy that's as skilled as Pavel Mintyukov, where I think that they are more fluid in their positioning as the game goes along. And so,
Dumoulin is just so much more skilled than I expected. He makes these subtle little plays in the breakout, using his feet or using his hands, where he'll just fake people out, manipulate those forecheckers, and just make that simple outlet pass. So that pairing was really good. And then this is an emerging theme, but something that, I mean, we'll have chances, I guess, to talk about it more. But Troy Terry scoring on that pretty feed from Ryan Strome And I guess we can kind of zoom out on this one too, not just to this game, but this has been the Ducks' best line this
Yeah.
season. Terry, Vetrano, and Strome. We talked about it last week, but that only became more true leading up to this podcast. Like that combination of Strome, Vetrano, Terry, it's been their best line by a lot, and part of that you could say is because the other lines haven't been so great, but they're playing legitimately good hockey. I mean, they just work together. I don't know how else to say it, but those three just work
Yeah.
together.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I think a lot of people will look back on the start of last season, right? And you remember how hot the Vetrano, Strome, McTavish line was,
Yep.
right?
But that
the
didn't feel sustainable.
Well,
Yeah.
that's where I was going with it, was that the underlying metrics didn't necessarily back that up. That was purely a production-based heater for that line, and it didn't really feel like it was going to be sustainable for them. Whereas this line with Troy Terry on it, I think because Terry is way more of a play driver than a Mason McTavish and solid defensively and all these different things, that line feels like there's a layer of sustainability to it and a layer of responsibility defensively. Like, I know we're talking about the Utah game right now where they were amazing. They had the great goal. Ryan Strome, I think, is playing some of his best hockey as a Duck right now and making that contract not seem as horrible and maybe even a good value contract if he continues this throughout the season. But you look at the game against LA where Vetrano didn't play in the game against Colorado, but against LA, they were hard matched against the Kopitar line. Mm-hmm. Like, that was the line that was hard matched, getting the toughest assignments against another line. And they, I think, came out on the positive side, or they were around 50%, which if you were to tell me that going into the season, that a line with Frank Vetrano and Ryan Strome was getting hard matched against other teams' top lines and was not getting absolutely caved in, I would have been shocked.
Yeah.
And that is what's happening right now. And it's really, really beautiful to see. It's something that is a great sign of things to come because it just gives the Ducks a whole lot of options, and we'll get into the line combinations in the future. But it gives the Ducks a lot of options with how they build their lines because we talk so much about, well, do you play Zegras at center? Do you go two centers? Do you go those three down the center? How do you build those other two lines? How do you build the depth? And with Ryan Strome playing as a center and giving you really good minutes as a center with the other two, that gives you so much flexibility with your other two lines and allows you to it almost feels in some ways like a cheat card because it's not something that we expected.
Yeah, this is easily Greg Cronin's best move of the season. And some people may laugh at that because they'll say he hasn't been good. Maybe the people on Reddit who want him fired already. But this was a great call, and Greg Cronin deserves a lot of credit. And it's weird because watching them play, they just do all the right things. I mean, Ryan Strome deserves all the flowers right now. He is playing some fantastic hockey.
Who said what was it, the breakout star or not breakout star, but underrated player on the Ducks or something like that for our preseason predictions?
Who was it? You?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, you called it because, I mean, playing next to Troy Terry helps, but even this is something that we've talked a lot about with Strome, but he has shown an ability to thrive next to elite players back in New York with Artemi Panarin. And now that he's next to Troy Terry, another very puck dominant, loves to carry the puck up and down the ice like a Panarin, he's just finding all those little crevices. He's winning those battles along the boards. He's making the short area passes. He's also making the quick decision like we saw with the assist on the Terry goal against Utah. Like he's able to just really thrive in that scenario because he can just react off of Terry. He's really good at that. And then you have Vetrano, who is just kind of like a worker bee out there. He's going to go pressure the puck. He's going to win battles. He's going to get shots on net, make the simple play. And I think having two guys like that next to Troy Terry, it just really helps maximize him. And it's just 5 games, but what they've shown in those 5 games, like even if you erase the production, I think that this is a line that you can feel good about for the next, 20 games. I really think that they've found something here. And with Strome, I was saying this in our Discord last night, half jokingly, but he's my favorite Duck to watch right now because I swear every shift there's like one little pass or one little play that he makes where I'm like, damn, that was a really smart play. Like there was a play against LA where he gains the zone, he's backing up the D, but he's got nothing to work with, and he holds up just long enough so that Terry can come in as the trailer, and he leaves the puck off to him in a perfect spot, and then Terry rips the shot. It's just little stuff like that that really adds up that maybe Terry just hasn't had next to him the last couple of years. So
Yeah. And some other things of note from this game, just talking about the goals briefly. Robbie Fabry had a really nice goal. Beautiful assist from Trevor Zegras to pass it to him. Takes it off his skate, goes forehand to his backhand, and roofs it to be able to get that in the net. And then you had Leo Carlson scoring a great goal in overtime where Troy Terry knocks the puck out of midair, gets it, is able to strip the puck, and it gets to Leo Carlson, and Carlson's able to bury it going, was it backhand, forehand, or forehand, backhand? Forehand, I think.
Yep.
But the other big talking point, though, out of this game was Cutter Gauthier. And
got benched.
The game that he had. And I think that as much as we want to jump into the other games, and we've talked about all of the good from this game, I think we have to talk about that a little bit. And just, I mean, it can be honestly pretty quick because Gauthier was not very good. And
Yeah.
and
He just sucked that game.
Yeah.
I don't know what else there's to really say.
And he was given some leash also that we didn't see given to Trevor Zegras, for instance. When Zegras was benched, he was not put back on the ice for the next period. Gauthier was given a little bit of leash there by getting back on the ice and being put back on the power play in the third period. And as a result, had a really bad back check that led to a goal against, and that led him to being on the bench for the rest of the game. And so I think there's a distinct difference between this and Zegras in the sense of Gauthier is a young player, and I don't really mind this necessarily to be able to watch the game and figure it out. He's clearly been struggling, I think, throughout these first couple of games through his NHL career. I think in some ways he's gripping the stick a bit too hard. I think when one goes in, maybe the game will come a little bit easier to him as a whole, but I can't say this was necessarily undeserved. And I think another really positive, though, is Trevor Zegras had a quote after the game where basically he was stating that more or less lifting up Cutter and the type of player he is and the type of shot that he has. And I think that just goes to show the type of leadership that Zegras has. And having a guy in that locker room that's been through that is really, I think, going to help Gauthier in that situation.
Yeah, Gauthier was just not good in really any aspect of the game against, I keep almost saying the Jazz. This is a really bad slip by me. Against Utah.
You could be like John Allers and just call him the hockey club.
No, I won't do that. That is not their team name. But so with Gauthier, really from the start, I don't want to say he wasn't trying or he wasn't putting in any effort, but his forechecking looked lazy. It looked not engaged. It was not up to the standard that we know Greg Cronin wants his players to play at. And then when he had the puck on his stick, he just made poor decision after poor decision. There's the infamous one where he skates into 5 guys on a zone entry. There's the other one on the same power play where he had the bad back check. He also just gave the puck away. Just literally gave it to the Utah Hockey Club. Just passed it to the other team, tape to tape. And it just wasn't his night. And I think that this is why, again, before the season, I said, let's be careful with our Cutter Gauthier expectations, because in college, he was able to play a game like this, like the game against Utah, and have 2 goals, 3 goals at the end of the night. He was able to coast and still have plenty of production to show for it. This isn't college hockey anymore. The NHL is a lot more difficult. The standard is a lot higher. Everybody is good. Even the worst teams are good. Even the worst teams are better than the best college teams. And I think that it was just a wake-up call for him. And I think that as soon as the page turned to the next game, he was back to looking more engaged, back to making plays. So I don't hate this from Cronin because he was so far below the standard that it's like, it's just not your night. Let's just move on to the next. And I think he's gotten the message so far.
Yep. I would agree completely.
Colorado.
Yeah.
This is actually, it's funny because the LA game seems to be the one that set people off the most, but the Colorado game was the bad one. That was the bad game. I mean, you get outshot 49-19. You kind of need this desperation comeback at the end to even send it to overtime. This was just a bad game from the Ducks. I don't really know how deep we want to go on this. Like, they just didn't play well. They got obliterated. They looked like, I'm not going to say they looked scared because they're not scared. They're professional athletes, but they looked like, at least in the opening, like they just had no answers for what Colorado was doing. Like Colorado was just playing a different sport for like half this game.
it felt like they weren't able to pressure at all. Like, I think when this Ducks team, when we've seen them thrive against Vegas and against Utah specifically, because there was a lot of conversation, I think, last night about what is this team's identity? Because against LA, they're not doing anything. How does this team generate offense? And I think it's pretty clear if you watch the Utah game and watch the Vegas game, what this team wants to be when they're successful, which is they're a team that I know this is going to sound like a cliche because it's something the Ducks say. It's something, if you watch the Florida Panthers, it's something that they say, but they want to hunt pucks. They want to, if they don't have the puck and it's in the offensive zone, they want to get in on the forecheck. They want to create a little bit of havoc, create chaos, create turnovers, and create these battles for pucks and win those battles. And I think when you see this Ducks team not thriving, which is what happened against Colorado and also happened against LA, it's when the other team is able to move the puck quick and they're not able to really have puck support to pressure the guy that the puck is going to. And that's kind of what we saw in this game. And I think a large part of it is they got caught defending in their own zone so much, where Colorado is just so skilled and the Ducks weren't able to keep their gap control against them. And they really were struggling to maintain that pressure, that they were just too tired once they flipped the puck going the other way to be able to do anything on the forecheck and be able to get pucks and create some sort of havoc and offense in the other zone. And that to me was the biggest issue from this game, as kind of a massive look at this game.
Well, also with Colorado, they are a team that plays at such a high pace and they move the pucks quickly and they have guys on the back end who can make plays, that just being a high pressure team might not necessarily be the way to go, because you're going to chase after them and True. they're going to skate by you. they're just going to keep going north. And then on the breakout, when the Ducks have the puck, the pressure that they bring on the forecheck, it just looked like a lot for some of their younger D. It just looked like they just hadn't seen that before, even though some of them have. And so early in the season, you're a team in the Ducks that's trying to forge an identity, that's trying to establish systems, that's trying to integrate new personnel or just new combinations. And you're going into a hostile environment in Denver against a team that is a well-oiled machine, that has championship pedigree. I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. And I don't want to let the Ducks off the hook. I don't want to just give them that out, because they have control over their destiny as well. You can bring a better effort than that. You can bring a better performance than that. They didn't, but that game is not having me ring the alarm bells, basically. And I think, and just another point, a big reason for that too, for me, is that they got ran over for most of the game. I mean, the shots on goal in the second period were 17-2, but in the late third period, a couple power plays, they're able to generate some zone time, generate some looks, and as the power play expires, they get a late tying goal. And I just think that, was it the cleanest power play? No. Was it precisely because of the power play they scored? No, because it was after it expired. But we haven't seen the Ducks special teams and their power play in particular give them that kind of jolt in a must-score situation in a long time. And so as much as it was a shit show for most of the game for the Ducks, that part of it was at least encouraging.
And that was probably the best power play sequence that they had. And granted, late in a game where the Ducks are going to have more pressure on a team. But, I mean, they had the power play earlier in the game. They took the penalty on the drop pass, things like that. So kind of negated that power play altogether. But they switched things up for the late game power play. They put McTavish, Fabry, Zegras, Strome, and Minchikov on the ice for the start of that first power play, where they looked dangerous for that power play. We're able to be in the zone for the vast majority of it. And then when they did change and Terry got out there, Terry drew the penalty. And then they came out with a 6-on-4, put Fowler, McTavish, Fabry, Zegras, Strome, Carlson with the empty net. And then eventually Terry came on with Killorn, and that was when the goal was scored late to tie it. And that all came from the pressure that they were having. And so I agree with a lot of the sentiment out there about the power play needing to improve, but this was a really good last 6 minutes for the Ducks, where they were on the power play for 4 of those 6 minutes. And it wasn't a situation where they were giving the puck up and it going the other way, which is what has felt like happened for a lot of power play. They held the puck for the vast majority of those 2 power plays and were able to piggyback on that with the Troy Terry goal at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, one of those power plays, they had the puck for basically 2 minutes straight. I mean,
Yeah.
they were controlling it really well. Zegras was handling it on that right flank, looking for openings. Strome doing a really good job on the other side, trying to break free. Minchikov controlling the puck. Like, yes, that power play wasn't perfect, but we need to kind of reassess sometimes our how we evaluate. It's like, hey, having the puck, control the puck for this power play, that is a good step. The fact that they were able to sustain pressure is a good step. Now you're opening yourself up to good things happening, and eventually they did. And Troy Terry with a really nice shot on the game tying goal. It's a step forward for this team, even though the rest of the game, like Ryan Strome said, was very very bad. But
Yeah.
I don't know really what else I can take away from this game.
Lucas Chasal was really good. We haven't talked about him really that much yet.
I feel like we're not giving him enough love, but he's been probably their best player this season.
Yeah.
If we're just going by that most impact, it's been Dostal.
Yep.
He's been great.
Yep.
On to LA.
This is the interesting game.
This is the one that broke people's brains.
Because you and I texted about it that this game really wasn't that bad.
Oh man, looking at the shot on goal totals by period.
The shot on goals make it look way worse than I think it was, though.
Correct.
Like,
yes.
Greg Cronin had an interesting interview today that actually completely aligned with the numbers that basically the Ducks played really well for 2 periods. Not really well. I should rephrase that. I'm being a little bit too glowing.
They were competitive.
They were competitive for 2 periods, and that's how it felt. Like, it just felt really low event for 2 periods. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, I think you can be critical of the fact that you want the Ducks to generate more offense, but they did a really sound job defensively, which I think Utah was a wide open game defensively. Colorado, we talked about, was really poor defensively in their own zone.
It was an avalanche.
Wow. But I think they really cleared up that part of the game in the LA game, specifically in the first 2 periods with their in-zone defense. And even in the third period, I thought their in-zone defense was solid enough. And so I think that is kind of being glossed over a lot by the doom and gloom that's come out of this because it's playing a rival, everything like that. But it's really just kind of 2 mistakes that happened in that third period in LA, or I guess 1 mistake in LA kind of started pushing on that a bit more afterwards. And so I think the frustrating part from this game is they need to be generating more offense. That is going to have to come, and we're going to already get into it, but it seems like things are changing as a result of that. But I do think that there are some positives to be taken away from this game, which is that I think they look solid defensively. I think Jackson Lacombe, there are going to be people out there that are going to be critical of the 2 mistakes that ended up happening.
I mean, it cost them the game.
It did.
To be fair. Yeah.
But I do think that he had a solid game. Like, I think that this was a good first game back.
Yeah. Well, so going at it just period by period, I thought the Ducks were good in the first period. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were moving pucks, they were getting pucks deep, they were pressuring, they were keeping things to the outside. Like, they looked solid. LA only had 5 shots on goal in the first period, and that's how it looked. The Ducks were doing a sound job defensively. At 5-on-5, only 10 shot attempts against, so things were tight there. And they weren't really able to manage really many clean looks, but there was that zone entry by Troy Terry where he breaks down a defender, and then he has Strome driving to the middle, creates a lane. Vetrano's on the backside, and Terry finds him, and they almost connect for a tap-in. I mean, that happened. I don't even think that counted as a shot on goal, but that was a great opportunity. Mm-hmm. So to me, the first period was very competitive, and then the second period felt a little disjointed. You know, I don't think that the Ducks really generated a whole lot. There weren't really any standout chances, but they also didn't really allow a ton either.
I think Vetrano missed 1 wide open net, maybe if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, there was also. Was this in the second period or the first period? But there was the play by Zegras. I put it on Twitter. Oh, it was in the first period. Okay, where Zegras stick handles around a defender behind the Kings net, and then gets to behind the net and does the kind of like against the grain wraparound pass. And Riddick is completely fooled. There's an empty net, and the puck goes to Ross Johnston, and he's just not ready for it. So
sounds about right.
The Ducks had some looks, and then in this third period, I thought that the 2 things that kind of troubled me about the third period are that the Ducks were down, and they still got really. I mean, if you looked at shot attempts 5-on-5, it was 29-9 for LA. The shots on goal were 18-4 for LA, and that's a period in which they're trailing and they need to come back. And so I think that the lack of push in the
Yeah.
third period was really disheartening. And maybe if you spliced it even finer, maybe a lot of those shots for LA came at the beginning of the period where they got up. But
No, it's a pretty
I
even distribution looking at shot attempts.
and the first goal by Kempe Lacombe is just. I mean, Lacombe just doesn't read it right. He's too far ahead. It was almost like a football play where the corner is his leverage is all messed up and it's an easy touchdown pass. Kempe goes in for the breakaway goal, and then I mean the second Kings goal. What can you really say? There was
Yeah.
a split. There was a split second where it looked like there was that cross ice pass to be made for Lacombe, but he kind of hacks at the puck instead of getting a clean pass, and it goes right to Laferriere, who's able to score. And then after that, Ryan Strome gets on the board. So shout out to Ryan Strome yet again
Yeah.
for his continued success. But again, it's that lack of push. Yes, the Ducks did have a little bit of a push in the last 2 to 5 minutes, but it just wasn't enough. And I guess maybe that's just my biggest gripe out of this game, outside of the general lack of offense, is the lack of real push at the end.
Well, yeah, you expect to see some score effects, and
Yeah.
we didn't even really see that out of the team. And so,
Yeah.
whether that, I mean, this is not, like you said, against Colorado, not trying to give them the out here of Colorado being a great team, but I think there is the other side of this where LA is one of the best defensive teams in the league. And so that does
Man.
need to be mentioned here, but they need to find ways. They need to find ways. They need to start finding ways, but this is not this catastrophic loss.
No, it was honestly just kind of a vanilla loss that was a little quiet because of the lack of shots on goal. But watching them play, I didn't feel like I was watching a team that's kind of on the
This
precipice
wasn't-
of disaster.
This wasn't like some of the games from 2 years ago.
No, they played a sound game and the offense was lacking, and we'll get into some of the reasons why that is, but why that was. But they just didn't. I don't know. They just couldn't execute offensively, but everything else looked pretty decent. Also, Troy Terry's pass on Strome's goal, the kind of shot pass where Strome just has to put a stick on it. I mean, what more can you say about these guys?
Troy Terry's playing some of his best hockey right now. It's so fun.
I just think that we need to acknowledge and appreciate what that line is doing.
Yeah.
Because it is actually really fun to watch. And I think that maybe why people are almost hesitant to jump on that bandwagon is because none of those guys are part of the young core. I mean, Terry isn't really part of that young core. He's an older guy now, and Strome and Vetrano are obviously veterans. So maybe there's just less excitement. It doesn't feel like it counts for as much, but to me, it completely matters because it takes pressure off of the other players when you have a top line that's going like that.
Yeah.
So
They were at over 60% expected goal share last night.
yeah,
That line's been legitimately good. And they, like I said, they were a hard match. If you watched out the game, they were put out there by Cronin specifically against Kopitar.
Yeah. With last change, Cronin was putting him out there against the Kings' best, and that's why I think yes, the Kings are a sound defensive team and they can be stifling, but at the same time, the Ducks did have a line that was able to break through, and so it's not as if it's this kind of unbreachable thing where they just they're going to shut you down no matter what. There were ways, and it just didn't happen. So
yeah.
should we take or do you have anything else?
No, I was just going to say on the flip side of that, to jump into some of the line discussion.
Yeah.
The issue here is some of the other lines were really not great last night.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Let's just go line by line and just kind of talk about each line and just figure out where this thing is going. We talked about how there may be changes coming, but let's just talk about what we've seen thus far. Let's start with Gauthier, Carlson, and Killorn, who I actually thought was maybe the second best line yesterday because they didn't get many clean opportunities, but they were the line that was at least able to generate the most zone time of any of the other lines outside of the Terry line. What did you see from that Carlson line?
Yeah, I think they were able to generate some of the most zone time, but they weren't able to really create a whole lot for themselves. I think that at times Gauthier looked better than he had in previous games. I think he was able to at least get some shots. It feels like he's fighting the puck at times. Like, I think there were a couple times where he was around the net with the puck having just been passed to him, and he just is fumbling it or trying to like spin in a specific way to get a shot. And it just feels like nothing's coming easy to him in those specific moments. And so I think that you're probably right that was probably the second best line, but they still were struggling, I think, to get their looks. I mean, Carlson had a rough
they
night.
weren't breaking through. They were possessing the puck, but it was a lot of just, working it along the boards, trying to just keep possession alive, not really carving into the middle of the ice and getting quality shots. But to me, Leo's Leo. He's looked pretty much great this entire season. My only quibble with him is his turnovers in the power play are really costly, but we're not talking about the power play right now. The guy that I want to underline and highlight and bold and italicize.
Are you going to go on your soapbox?
Alex Killorn. So it's 5 games, but allow me this hot take. That could end up being very wrong. I will admit that. I will admit that this hot take could be wrong, but from what I have gathered visually, from what I've seen, the Alex Killorn contract, which has 2 years remaining, is looking like an absolute miss by Pat Verbeek. He is, let me make sure I get this right, he is 35, and he looks every one of those 35 years out there right now. He looks slow. He has some flashes where he'll possess the puck and make a little play. And I get it. He's probably always been slow. But when you're playing next to a Leo Carlsson, and for that matter, a Cutter Gauthier, who are both fast skaters, who play with a lot of pace, Killorn is just slowing them down. And it's unclear what he brings to the table. Yes, he can win battles. Yes, he can make small area plays in the offensive zone. But at the price tag that they're getting him for, I don't know. I feel like we're past the point where we can just rationalize that one. It's just looking like a miss, and I'm not sure if it's going to get better. Maybe it will, and you can throw eggs at me. You can put egg on my face, tar and feather me, but right now I am very, very low on number 17.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a long-term perspective, I think you're right with this. I think from a long-term team-building perspective, it's probably not going to be something that impacts them because they do have so much cap space still to sign their players where it's not going to be cost prohibitive to them. It is absolutely looking like a miss. I think you're right there. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to hurt them long term, if that makes sense, though. And actually, can I admit something here?
Sure. When
you said year 2 of 4, for some reason I thought it was a 5 or 6 year deal in my head in this moment. I had forgotten that it was a 4-year deal. Mm-hmm. So I actually feel better about it right now than I thought I was. Funny how perspective is. Perspective can work.
You can rationalize it if you'd like.
That's not rationalizing. It's just funny because I thought it was 5 or 6 years for some reason and forgot that it was 4 years in this moment.
It's a 4-year deal, but the return on investment is just it's
not
bad.
great. Not
it's
great
bad.
right now.
I can't tell you what he brings. I can't tell you what he does for this team besides be a quote unquote veteran.
To be completely clear here, or not clear here, to open up to a devil's advocate side of it, with some of the line changes that are happening here, there is a potential that Alex Killorn could thrive. That is a situation where playing with a Leo Carlsson and a Cutter Gauthier that are more of transition type players, younger players that want to join the rush and play in that manner, that just isn't working with him. And while Trevor Zegras is also a player that does like to get up into the rush, he's a
little slower.
He's a little slower, a bit more creative.
More methodical.
We've talked about it, that one of the issues sometimes with Zegras, he doesn't move his legs when he brings the puck in. He glides a bit. And that can maybe be conducive to playing with an Alex Killorn, where he's not going to necessarily have to keep up with the pace in that same manner. And you're also going to have a methodical passer. That wasn't the word I was looking for, but whatever. Someone who can make that pass and can find him when he's there. And so I agree that I don't think the Killorn contract is going to look good and has looked great. But I do think that there is a chance where he is still able to have a solid enough season. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Can it be salvaged? And I don't disagree with you there. I think that Carlsson and Gauthier are not a good mix for him.
Yeah.
But again, you can't divorce the contract
Agreed.
from the player.
Agreed.
And I'm not saying this to push back on you. I'm just saying it to say that, yeah, there's a circumstance where Killorn could be good, but even in that circumstance, is he going to be $6.25 million good? I don't know. Leaning towards no. Leaning towards a hard no there. But anyway. So that line, I think... So today at practice, they had Fabry with those two, with Gauthier and Carlson.
Yes.
And I think Fabry could be a much better fit there.
You mentioned that last podcast, and I agree.
Yeah,
Although,
hey, look at that.
Let me ask you this. Just throwing this out there. What would you think of Trevor Zegras on that line?
Wouldn't hate it. Wouldn't hate it.
Do you think Robbie Fabry is better suited for that line than a Trevor Zegras?
I think so.
Okay.
Because I think that I think that Gauthier and Carlson, they want to have the puck on their stick. They want to carry it, and then that means the other two players are going to be, like, the effectiveness of some of those drives through the ice is going to depend on how well the other two guys can support and how willing they are to skate hard, carve into lanes, drive to the net, and create space. Have that nice equilibrium, that spacing on the ice. Trevor Zegras, that is not his game. When Trevor Zegras doesn't have the puck, he's not doing that, is all I'll say. And so, yes, Trevor Zegras does have the skill and the IQ to maybe elevate those guys, but I'm not sure if his game necessarily matches how they want to go. So,
okay.
The other line, this line, I'm a little bit at a loss with this one. Fabry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Fabry, McTavish, Zegras. This line has had some good moments. You talked about the goal for Fabry against Utah. But boy, oh boy, the last two games,
yeah,
and even prior to that, it just doesn't work. I'm ready to go there. And in particular, what doesn't work right now is Mason McTavish's play. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the flu bug going through the locker room, but he looks slow. He took a horrible hooking penalty against LA. Totally needless. He's not making plays with the puck. It's just very unclear what McTavish is bringing to the table right now, because Zegras is still doing Zegras things. He's still making plays. He's still stick handling, still dancing. Fabry's still getting after it, but McTavish, to me right now, looks terrible. And it's just 5 games. Players will have bad 5-game stretches all the time, but he is a guy who just is bringing that line down, in my opinion.
He looks like he's fighting the puck.
He's like barely even touching the puck. Is it just me, or like is he just never touching the puck?
It feels like when he gets the puck in the neutral zone, that he's fighting it, that he's fumbling it, he can't transition with it fully. He's fighting it to be able to get it to where it needs to go.
And he's not using his shot. He's not getting shots off. Like it's hard to watch. I actually feel bad because I feel like he's a player who this franchise has a lot of hopes for. And at least right now, maybe he has an injury. I don't know what it is, but he is not passing the eye test right now.
Yeah.
So, but do you agree with me at least that Fabry and Zegras have been?
Yes, I think Trevor Zegras, I think actually defensively has looked really good.
Yeah, I think he's been pretty engaged. Yeah,
I think he's been engaged. I think he's made some really good board battles. I think he makes really good plays when the puck gets on his stick down low. Like, I don't think he's looked bad. I think the LA game maybe was his worst game in his own zone. But even then, I think he was still better than McTavish in that front. And I think Robbie Fabry's brought a nice element to this team. I think he's been a good penalty killer for this team.
Yeah, you compared him to a former Duck.
I did. He reminds me in some ways, and maybe this is just because they're both Italian, but like he reminds me in some ways of Andrew Cogliano. Like yeah. I think smaller guy, skates, kind of plays in your face style of game, is a good penalty killer. Like, I think that there is a little of Andrew Cogliano to his game, maybe a little bit more skill from what we saw in the goal that he scored.
More skill, less skating, for sure.
Yeah. But there is a little bit of a blueprint there, I think, for him.
Yep. And then the fourth line, I mean, we've talked about them before, but Ross Johnston is not really, I mean, nothing new here, but Ross Johnston's not really helping out.
No. I mean, the fourth line when it was Brock McGinn, Isaac Lundestrom, Brett Leeson, can't ask for anything more from that line.
Yep, and then Lundestrom took a bad hit. Was it against Colorado?
Yes. No, it was against Utah. Utah.
Utah, that's right. Yeah, it was against Utah. He took a bad hit. Well, it was more of just an accident behind the net, but he gets hit in the head. Um, but today he was skating he was skating at practice, so maybe it'll be fine. Do you want to just breeze through the blue line
Sure.
or I mean, to me, so I want to talk about Fowler and Luneau a little bit. What have you made of their games so far?
I think Fowler's looked actually solid. Like,
Yeah.
I think he's gotten some hate from some people just because I think of some of the power play situations that he's been put into.
Yeah.
But and some of the turnovers that have happened.
Fowler at 5-on-5 and Fowler at 5-on-4 are two different players.
Like, I think Fowler, there were a couple plays exiting the D zone throughout this last little stretch that have been excellent, where he's jumped up into the play and then made a pass after he got out of the zone. It was vintage Cam Fowler in those situations using his skating. And I'm going to come to your side here. I think Luneau has looked solid.
Wow. We did it. It's been a week where I've been asking Jake if he's changed his mind on Luneau.
Yeah.
I mean, he's still making mistakes here and there. Like there was their turnover against LA where he kind of just passed it to no one behind the net. But I think, again, with Luneau, you need to keep the perspective that he is just like the fact that he's doing this, that he's looking like a solid enough NHL defenseman with how little he has played. He went straight from junior as a not first round pick. Basically barely played in the AHL, then barely played at all in his rookie season, to now be doing this. You have to give the guy a little credit. Like, Tristan Luneau is impressing me. And I think he's getting better every game, even though there are still going to be mistakes. And this is just 5 games in. 5 games from now, 10 games from now, he could be one of their best defensemen. Like, we just don't know. Mm-hmm. So, like, his development curve is just crazy.
Yeah.
And then Gudas, I mean, I think he's been fine.
Gudas has been solid. I think Jackson Lacombe looked solid for a first game back. I think that people are going to be sour on the turnovers that he had. But I think overall, like, it's interesting because I think everything that he did wrong last season, he had a really rough rookie season. I think he looked like all that stuff was gone. All the stuff that was really plaguing him last season was gone, I think, in that game against LA. And it was just needs to clean up those turnovers, but that'll come.
Yep. And then I think Olen Zellweger has been awesome.
Yep.
I think he's been legitimately, especially in the power play, I think he's been great. So, and then Dumoulin, and we've talked about him as well.
Yeah, we talked about Dumoulin, Minchikov.
Yep. Okay. Well, I guess the last order of business is just to talk about the new lines potentially.
Yep. And then if you want to briefly touch on what you've seen on the power play. But let's start with the new lines.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about. Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we'll just read them out. So I guess one thing to note is that today Strum and Vetrano were not at practice, but the lines, the Ducks could essentially, the way that it broke down with the lines at practice today, they could have kept them the same, because Terry was basically skating with replacements with Vakanainen and Johnston. So like clearly that's not a line, but everything else changed. They could have kept everything else the same because the two guys that were missing were Terry's line mates. So you've got Gauthier, Carlson, Fabry, which we've talked about, which I think is going to be a better fit. Mm-hmm. This is the wild card. Zegras, Lundestrom, Killorn. What this just looks like a line randomizer line. What do you make of this one?
Can I just say it? I don't hate it.
I don't hate it either.
Which is not something I expected to say about having Trevor Zegras and Isaac Lundestrom together. I don't think I would have said that because Lundestrom to me is a fourth line center. Yeah. But I think like the fact that you have like, so right now the way that I break up these lines or put these lines in my head is that you have Strome, Terry, Vetrano, and that's unbreakable right now. Like that is just a really good line.
Yep.
And I think you want to keep Gauthier and Carlson together. Mm-hmm. And like you said, I think having Zegras with them might not be the best situation for Trevor Zegras to make an impact. And so you put a Robbie Fabry there. All right, what are you left with then? What are you left to work with then? And Mason McTavish is having a rough go of it. So you want to split them up. All right, then what do? I think Isaac Lundestrom is actually a decent option here because Isaac is going to be able to do a lot of the work in the defensive zone. When he's been really good this season, and Isaac deserves a lot of credit. He's been good this year. He's great at getting that puck in the defensive zone and transitioning it. And we see him a lot of times enter the zone, but I think if he's with Zegras, you could see him shift the puck to him or enter that zone and create a little drop pass for Zegras. So once the puck's in the offensive zone, Trevor Zegras ends up having it and is able to dictate the play with it, because Lundestrom, I don't think, has ever played with a playmaker like a Trevor Zegras in that manner. And so you get the puck on Zegras' stick to be able to create it. Lundestrom's also not the fastest skater in the world. And so that also means that these guys aren't going to play with a super high pace. So that allows Alex Killorn to keep up with them and get to a dangerous spot along with Lundestrom to potentially get to some good spots on the ice for Trevor Zegras to find them. And so I think it could work. Maybe you can quibble with it because there's no real high-skilled player playing with them, but I think that's just kind of the situation the Ducks are in with the roster construction right now, and the fact that you don't want to break up Vetrano, Strome, Terry. If that line wasn't working, then we have a whole different conversation here, and you put Zegras, I mean, you could do Zegras, Lundestrom, Terry at that point and switch things up there. But I think this is a natural progression. I think there's a lot of logic behind this situation that's happening here. And then as a result, you end up with McTavish centering McGinn and Leeson. In some ways, it may be a wake-up call, maybe a way to get him right. And it puts him out there with two very defensively responsible forwards who can play well and really maybe pick up the pieces for him and get his game going right. And you look at the way that fourth line with Isaac Lundestrom, Brock McGinn, and Brett Leeson play, right? They play exactly how Greg Cronin wants a team to play.
Mm-hmm.
They get the puck in the zone. They hunt pucks. They get in on the forecheck. They try to create offense off those turnovers. And so I think maybe what he's thinking here is he's hoping that both Brock McGinn and Brett Leeson can almost bring that in some ways to a Mason McTavish, help him get there because they are doing that so effectively throughout a game. And I think that is probably the thought there.
Yeah, I think that Lundestrom line is just so fascinating because Lundestrom is, you talked about it. He's great at carrying the puck. That is the one thing he does. He's always done well. And, he's got some decent speed. And the thing with Zegras is that when he doesn't have the puck, he's not a guy where on the entry, if he's not the puck carrier, he's going to be just sprinting to the net. That's just not his game. Zegras is much more likely to try to just kind of follow the puck carrier as a trailer. And then, so you have Lundestrom gaining the zone, drops it off to Zegras, and now Zegras has the whole field of play in front of him. Now we can see where his options are, and that's where he's at his best. So Lundestrom creates that space for him, drops it back into the space that's been created. Zegras has the puck, and now he can assess. He can do his Zegras thing. He can attack the middle. He can go wide, try to set something up for Killorn, who's driving to the net. Give it back to Lundestrom, then he goes to the net. I think that if Zegras is going to be a wing, and he's not going to be in a situation where he is the puck carrier all the time on entry, having a guy like Lundestrom who's a great puck carrier, that may be the antidote. That may be the way that you still get the best of both worlds with Trevor Zegras, because so far this season, Mason McTavish has just not been that at all. And
that was the hope with having Mason McTavish there, because when he is playing well, he is good at transitioning the puck.
Exactly. And so I think that because the Vetrano, Strome, Terry line has worked so well, I'll give Cronin the benefit of the doubt here and say, okay, let's see it.
Let me ask you this. I know we talked about the power play, but there's a bunch of people that have brought this up in our chats, and there's a lot of people
we should probably have a power play therapy session.
We should, but I want to bring this up first.
Okay. I thought that's where you're going. Okay.
No, this goes towards kind of the conversation that we just had about the Ducks system and if coaching is just this massive problem for this Ducks team. And I want to just at least address this part of it. I think that the defensive zone system has worked relatively well. Outside of the Colorado game, I don't think there's major flubs. Utah, there are some issues there, but they're mainly in transition. But I think the system, they clearly have a system in their own zone. For anyone out there saying there isn't a system for this team in the defensive zone, then I'm not sure exactly what you're watching necessarily, because they have a man-to-man system. That is simply what they're going for. That's what they're going for there. And then from an offensive perspective, I think you look at exactly what he's doing right now. He's trying to switch things up. He's trying to make these changes. from an offensive zone perspective, it's clear when they are playing well what they want to do. And I mentioned this earlier, but against Utah and Vegas, they want to get in, they want to create havoc, they want to create turnovers against other teams. And they've done it. When they do it really well, and they are able to really create a lot of chances. We saw it really early, I think, in the game against Utah, where they only got one goal, but they ended up with like 3 or 4 insane scoring chances and somehow didn't capitalize. And it felt like in that Utah game early, they were going to run away with that game because of how they were able to create turnovers and create chances off of those turnovers. And so if you want to talk about a system for this team and coaching, that is what Greg Cronin wants from this team. And also from a coaching perspective, you look at the line changes. And so that was maybe me getting on a soapbox for people out there stating Greg Cronin isn't doing anything here. He has no system. This team it doesn't have a coach, basically. Like, there's a whole lot more here that I think that people are missing.
Yeah, I honestly, nothing has really stood out to me, good or bad, with the Ducks' defensive zone. It's just, and that's kind of a compliment. They've just felt like not at all a disaster.
Colorado's the only game that was kind of iffy.
And yes, and that was a bad one. But outside of that, sure, they're going to give up chances like every team does. But nothing has really stood out as, oh, this is a huge problem. There's a systems issue here. I think that, at least in the defensive zone, things feel pretty tight. You know, the forecheck has been pretty good at disrupting the exits for the other team. It's trying to slow them down, forcing dump-ins. I think that, and the defensemen have been really good on retrievals, on breakouts. I think that as far as that third of the ice is concerned, that the Ducks are in okay shape. And that is a pretty big step from what we've seen in the last few years.
Yep, exactly. All right.
Yeah.
Want to do the power play therapy session?
So, okay, let's do a little therapy for the power play. How does the power play make you feel? Let me ask you a better question. How does the drop pass entry make you feel?
Oh, here's my issue. I think it's a solid enough situation, a solid enough plan to have going into a game. I think where I get very frustrated with it as the system is when you have an Olin Zellweger or someone like that carrying the puck up the ice, and you have the penalty killer trailing him, essentially trying to block that back pass. And him essentially having to go laterally in the neutral zone to be able to make that pass, allowing that fourth man to get back. And so you had Olin Zellweger with the puck on his stick with 3 guys in front of him instead of 4. And instead of him making a pass to one of the guys there and doing a give and go to be able to get the puck in the zone, he is giving up that advantage there and is going to give it to someone back further when the neutral zone is more clogged. And I think that is the change that I want to see here, is some more fluidity. I think that if that is happening and you have a guy behind you, there needs to be an ability, and they have started doing this, but some sort of pivot that they're starting to work on. And they have shown that they are starting to do that, but it's something that I think is needed to happen sooner. And it's something that needs to continue to happen. And that is a tweak that I'd like to see happen or continue happening throughout the next however many games.
So I'm going to push back.
Okay.
I'm going to push back on you. And I'm going to say that the zone entries are actually fine. So for anyone who's curious, on the Patreon, people have been asking, people have been concerned. So after each game, I've just been going back and watching every power play from that game and doing a little video, try to keep them kind of short, 15-ish minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And at least against LA, and even at times against, was it Colorado? I thought that the zone entries are working pretty well. I mean, I think the default play for them is, like you kind of touched on, puck carrier gains the red zone just about, drops it back to a trailer then comes up with speed. He either walks it in or passes it to someone if he's under pressure. What they're doing now, though, and this is something that you also talked about, is that when there's a situation like against LA where a penalty killer is now following that dropper, he's now following him from behind, which you just don't see because they're predicting that that's going to happen. The Ducks have found some kind of counter moves to that. There was one play where an LA penalty killer was doing that to Troy Terry, and Troy Terry realized, oh, well, that means there's only 3 guys now guarding the blue line. And so he used that space and he just walked it right in, gained the zone because he used that against them. On other plays, they've now found this option as well. If the dropper can't drop it back right away, he'll get it over to the boards in the side of the neutral zone, and then that person will kick it back. And then those guys are then the two trailers and then able to come in with speed and create something. So I actually think that the zone entry part of it is fine, or it's
getting better. It's improving.
It's improving quite a bit. And then end zone is the bigger issue. That's the one that's the thing that is not working as of right now. And I could spend a lot of time talking about why I think that is. And briefly, I'll just say that they're not moving enough. It's too static. If one guy has the puck, a lot of players are watching. LA was able to feast on that on the penalty kill. They were pressuring the puck like crazy. The Ducks had no answers for it. The puck support was lousy. The puck management has been lousy. I talked about Carlson earlier, Gauthier, a lot of turnovers. All that is really crappy. But here's my bigger philosophical issue, and the reason why I think it's not working is there's no shot threat. There's no shooting threat on the ice at any time for the Ducks. Maybe you can say that's Troy Terry when he's out there, but you need someone who is the penalty killers are scared of leaving him open. You need someone who is gonna make you think a little bit when the puck is on one side of the ice. And the only player that I can think of that really has that in him as a one-timer guy, and we've seen it, is Mason McTavish. So to me, if
Frank
I were
Vetrano potentially also. Potentially.
We've seen it with him, and I don't think. To me, McTavish is in a different tier of a shooter.
Agreed. I'm just saying that there will be people out there that will point to Vetrano being there. I agree that McTavish is further above him, but Vetrano has that in his wheelhouse.
You'll remember in the last couple of years, the Ducks did have stretches where they had some success with that Zegras to McTavish connection on the power play. And people got really frustrated with it because it was so predictable. And while yes, I agree, it was predictable, but at least it gave them something to go to, a fastball, where you can attack the zone, to use a baseball analogy. And then from there you can add in other stuff. And I think right now, I've been saying this in the videos as I just watched the footage, I'm like, I can't tell what they're working towards. What is the thing that they're trying to do when they're out there? It's unclear. And when you have a shooter on one side of the ice, think of all the great power plays. You know what you're trying to do. Get that guy the puck. And if you're the penalty killers, you know what you're trying to do. Stop that guy from getting the puck. So once that threat is there, then everything else can flow. Now you can have guys cutting in backdoor. You can have all these other little plays, but that's how I would redraw it. The reason I think it's not working right now is just because guys aren't moving enough. But all that being said, I still think that there's incremental progress every game. The zone entries are getting better. The time of control is getting better. So if they want to stick with this version of it, I think it will get better, and it could even be decent at some point. But I just have a big disagreement with the philosophy of it.
Yeah.
Now,
I think
now your reaction to that ramble.
I agree with everything you're saying. I think my issue with predictability is that it became the tried and true for that power play unit to go to that.
Correct.
The issue right now is there's not really anything that they're going to. And so you want that thing that is your go-to, and then you build upon that once it becomes a threat, and it adds another wrinkle to be able to get more chances. There's nothing that's even a tried and true right now. And I think the other thing that you didn't mention, and that is my issue with the end zone power play, is it seems like there's just an over-reliance on the boards right now. And I don't know if that is a player issue.
They struggle along the boards too.
Like, I don't know if that's a player issue or that's a coaching issue. Like, I don't know if that's a Clune thing or if that's just the players getting pressured and if it's a chicken or the egg situation here. But when that puck's along the boards, it's just creating more board battles. And when you have an aggressive penalty killing team like LA, they're just going to engage, and you aren't able to make those quick passes to relieve that pressure.
Well,
and
part of that too is they're just not, when a guy's getting pressured, nobody's coming over to support him. That's a big problem.
Yeah, but it's also, if guys are having to take pucks off their backhand, it's creating board battles. And even if you win that back, that's wasting time off the power play. Like, you want to be able to make quick passes to relieve that pressure, not have it go along the boards to create more battles. Like, you don't want those battles on a power play. You want maybe one of them, win the puck, get it back to the point, move the puck around and create movement and tire out the penalty killers to open up the ice and get a chance off of that by moving things around and causing confusion. And all you're doing with those board battles is creating confusion on yourself and not for the penalty killers. So
Yeah.
that to me is my biggest issue with the end zone side of it. I think what you said is spot on, but that's just another thing to be added to it.
Another thing is Camp Fowler just can't be on the power play.
Agreed.
I think that yesterday there was the play that I went ballistic over, talking to myself, recording the video, but where Terry makes, I think, was it Terry? I think it was Terry, or it might have been Strom. Can't remember. Oh, was this against Colorado? They're literally all blended together. But regardless, so yes, it was against Colorado. So Terry's getting pressured. He makes a good play and gets it over to Fowler, and Fowler just, all he has to do is simply one touch the puck over to Leo Carlsson, who will then have a one-timer, a great look. This might have actually been against LA. And instead, Fowler takes this really weird route to the puck where he kind of skates with it and then just kind of lazily flubs it over to Leo, and it goes towards the boards. So then Leo has to go pick it up on his backhand, kind of to what you're talking about. And then he gets pressured, and then he makes a quick pass to Gauthier, but now he's in a bad spot. And it all starts with that initial mistake by Fowler. And so, yeah, just he's just not a power play guy. Olen Zellweger is right there. Olen Zellweger is way more aggressive. He actually will look to shoot and create lanes. He would be my pick for sure. So
SD points out something I'm curious for your thoughts about. I think this is more about the support, but saying basically I think there's too much close puck support on the penalty kill, so the penalty killers can all play it strong side aggressively and win a ton of battles.
Well, at least yesterday they were not supporting. They were really spread out. I mean, the puck would get to one guy and it would be like social distancing. Like there would just be no one within 10 feet. Or was it 6 feet? I don't even remember.
6 feet.
6 feet. Hey, I was being overly cautious. 10 feet.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, at least yesterday the puck support was not there. So
yeah. Yep. Agreed. All right. Anything else that you want to get to? We're an hour 15, so maybe
we had a lot to say.
We blitzed through some questions here, though.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So we're going to start with our Patreon exclusive Discord. Go to patreon.com/crashspawn, where you can get access to our Discord at the $2 tier. So we have some questions. Let's start with this one. I think this came from Olaf last week. It said, is Pavel Minchikov the prototypical blue line player for a Verbeek/Cronin system?
I think so. That's what we were talking about earlier. He's just so aggressive everywhere. He's always got his hand in whatever's going on the ice. So yeah, I would agree with that.
Shaken Wing said, are Gauthier and Killorn holding Carlson back?
I'm gonna say yes. I mean, as okay at times as Gauthier has looked, he's a rookie and he's playing like a rookie at times. Leo Carlsson he's beyond that stage. So it kind of sucks, but I think long term that partnership could be very beneficial.
Yeah, I think you want to.
Right now, it's not there, but I think
you want to stick with that. You want to stick with that pairing for as long as it's feasible.
Yeah,
just because you want them to build that.
I agree.
The Puff said, "How would you change the power play? Not just the players in each group, but how they actually play on the power play."
I think we just answered that in thesis.
Yep.
Yeah, dissertation style. So.
And then One Kick Drumbanger said, to expand on this question, how do you change the team's approach to offense? It seems like they still don't have a handful of set plays that they can go to and deviate from at the moment, and as a result, their offense still seems to be sputtering and inconsistent.
Well, 5-on-5 offense is not a thing where you decide, oh, we're gonna play it a certain way, or we're gonna have a set play, or it's very fluid, it's very dynamic. And so it's more about, do you have certain concepts that you want to get to? Do you have certain personnel groupings that you think are going to get you certain looks? But it's not like the power play where you can really control your shot diet. Like, yes, to a degree at 5-on-5, if you want to say, okay, we're really going to attack the middle, we're really going to try to attack with speed. But those are more like big picture things. It's just not really a thing. You can't really just decide, oh, we're going to have these plays. And because they're like, how many times in a game at 5-on-5 is it just like a clean sheet where you can just decide what you want to do? The game is just constantly changing directions, changing possessions, bounces. So yeah, the game is just fluid.
Yeah. It's way too fluid. Guys are moving. You don't really want to have guys posted in specific areas looking for set plays because the puck's not always going to be in one situation. The likelihood of the puck being in a specific spot to allow for a set play to specifically work, that's not hockey at 5-on-5. Like
it's more about big concepts. Like, hey, we want to attack certain areas. We want to be more mindful of attacking, the backside, like all these different things.
And like I mentioned, if you go back to the Utah game, watch the first 10 minutes of that. Like, that is what Greg Cronin wants from this team and their approach to offense. Like, you look at after that, the Terry goal, like, I think Leo Carlson almost scored. Like, posts were getting hit. The Ducks were just swarming the puck. They were constantly providing pressure. I mean, this is not an abnormal thing. Like, look at the team that just won the Stanley Cup, the Florida Panthers. For anyone out there talking about a system and the Ducks system is a garbage one, things like that, Greg Cronin wants the Ducks to play like the Florida Panthers, basically. Like, that is the ideal system for Greg Cronin hockey, is a team that goes and hunts pucks, wins battles, gets pucks back, and plays a hard man-to-man system in their own zone. So for anyone that doesn't think man-to-man system can work, look at the Florida Panthers. They did it, and they just won the Stanley Cup, and they've been really good at it. They have really good players. That also is very useful for them, and the Ducks still need to develop that. But, like, this is a system that does work, and it just has to be implemented, and the players have to execute that. So, yeah. So I don't know if I would necessarily change the way they approach offense.
I think offense is more about finding the right combinations.
Yes,
and letting those players kind of create for themselves. So
agreed. Duck Jaggernaut said, if you were allowed to make one trade on behalf of the Ducks and could not acquire picks, what player would you target and who would be on your chopping block?
Oh, man. Chopping block? Alex Killorn. If I could just get a do-over with that one.
Nikolai Ehlers.
Yeah? Okay. I mean, I don't know how realistic we can be here.
Isn't he on the final year of a deal? I guess they wouldn't really trade for him at this point because the Jets are good. It would be more an off-season signing, but like Nikolai Ehlers would be a good one. Like I'm thinking about guys that like are potentially on the outs from their team, I guess.
I will say I poo-pooed it heavily over the summer, but watching this Ducks power play, Patrick Laine would really kind of just tie things together with that one-timer threat. And then maybe you can flip him down the line for assets. But anyway.
Yeah. Who's on the chopping block? I mean, I think Cam Fowler at this point, as much as I think he's been good at 5-on-5.
Well, just look at the logjam.
Yeah, I mean, that's the issue here is the logjam. Like the fact that Olin Zellweger is probably not going to be playing tomorrow as a result of all defensemen being healthy and ready to play. Like Zellweger should be playing. Like Fowler at this point shouldn't be scratched. I don't think he's at that point. Like there's only 6 spots. And and so to me that is why Cam Fowler should be probably on the chopping block and is likely probably going to be traded this season. Like I think that's going to happen. Tussle said, "Is it a controversial opinion at this point that the team needs Fowler and probably another, or that the team needs Fowler and probably another veteran defenseman?"
Well, need them for what? To make the playoffs this season? Maybe. But long term, I don't think that they need either of those things. I think that that's going to come internally. Yeah. Maybe you need to go and get another piece, but for this season, sure. But long term, I don't know if I agree with that.
Yeah. And want to shout out Solani Sandwich that he asked about drop pass on the power play breakout. We went into that enough.
Yeah. If you're still curious, go watch the Patreon videos, and you will eat your heart out there because that's all we do is nerd out over power play. So
yeah. Let's see very quickly. I think I got a couple questions on Twitter. Bowtied Exhorter said, "What do you make of Cronin's remarks about the team not skating? Seems like that's been a problem for a few years where they have more games than not where they get outskated." I mean, I think he was just emotional after the game.
He literally said that. He said that he got it wrong. And I will say, here's my one concern with that. If Cronin is so emotional after a game that his version of the events ends up being wrong, like, is that also happening on the bench in the game? Like, I'm slightly concerned that, because this has happened multiple times with Cronin, where he says something after a game that's like that ends up being completely wrong, and he will, to his credit, walk it back. But I'm like, well, what did he think about it in the moment?
Yeah.
Because if he's not seeing it right, then he's not giving the right instructions. And so, but here's the thing: if you can recognize it after the fact and you make the adjustments from there, like eventually you're going to get to the right answer.
I also think he's a smart enough guy where he can see that and be able to identify that as he's going forward and make those adjustments to his viewpoint on the game. Because that's the other part of this is, while yes, you're right that what is he seeing there if he's wrong, I think there's also the situation where it's clear that he's identifying what actually happened after the fact. And when you're able to do that, you're able to adjust your perspective on things, regardless of your age, regardless of how long you've been in the game. If you're open to taking in new information and adjusting your viewpoint, you're able to do that moving forward also.
Yep, I agree.
Twinkie Boy asks this question for you guys. Why does Jackson Lacombe, who has a history of repeated egregious errors at key times in games, who's older than the other young D-men by a few years, seem to get a free pass by our fan base? Which of Zellweger / Lacombe gets traded?
Was that sarcastic?
I don't know. I don't think he got a free pass because we were critical of him last year. And then I also don't think he really... Did he make a lot of egregious errors last year?
He had some rough stretches.
He was rough overall. I just don't remember like egregious errors. But
like also he's not. I guess maybe the standard for him is a little lower just because he wasn't like a high draft pick, like but I don't know. I think we're critical of him when it's time to be critical. I mean, the mistakes he made yesterday, I said it earlier, cost the Ducks the game. Whether he had a good play the rest of the game, if you screw up that badly twice, that can decide a game. In a playoff game, that would be devastating. So, like, there you go. There's your Lacombe criticism.
Yeah. I was going to add... Oh, I would not have him on the power play.
Yeah, I think he's okay there, but Olin Zellweger and Pavel Minchikov are just better options.
Yeah.
So
all right. We're going to jump to Twitch and YouTube. So for those of you listening on your favorite podcast services, you can find us at twitch.tv/crashspawn, where you can be just like our good friend Dux Jaggernaut, who resubbed for 24 months, or for his 25th month. Thank you so much. And Dr. Bagelstein, who resubbed for a second month. And so you can do that completely free to you if you have Amazon Prime, or you can find us at YouTube at youtube.com/crashthepond, where you can subscribe to the channel, like our videos, completely free to you, and does help out more than you can imagine. So we got a question from Elizabeth Leo. Said, what were your original impressions of the Ducks' top 10 draft picks since 2019, and what are your current impressions of them? This includes Zegras, Drysdale, McTavish, Minchikov, Carlson. Zegras, I loved it.
So is this all of them? I'm pretty sure it is.
Yes, it is.
So Zegras, big fan of it at the time.
Big fan. Drysdale,
not a fan.
Thought it was
understood it, but not a fan.
Yes, I would agree with that. I don't remember if there was anything. I think you and I were both maybe on Marco Rossi or Alexander Holtz over Jamie Drysdale.
Yeah, I was big on Rossi and Perfetti over Drysdale. So,
and then Mason McTavish. Mason McTavish was probably the one I was the least fan of at the time. I think my response at the time was it was defensible. I thought that if you were looking at...
he was also one of the few guys that they were able to see in person.
And if you were looking at Matty Beniers and really liked Matty Beniers, he was essentially a diet Matty Beniers, more or less. But
what diet are we talking about? Like 1,200 calories a day? Like
I meant at that time
intermittent
in terms of
fasting,
like transition center, things
starvation
like that.
diet, Matty Beniers.
I would have liked William Eklund in that draft more than Mason McTavish.
I mean, hell, I feel like there were some other guys too that would have been really good.
I mean, Seth Jarvis in hindsight would have been the one in the Drysdale draft.
Yeah, but that one wasn't really talked about though in that range for the Ducks. I mean,
Mason McTavish, maybe Luke Hughes.
Luke Hughes went fourth.
But I don't know, with the Ducks defensemen,
Luke Hughes would be the best of that bunch right now.
The Ducks defense? No, I think Minchikov's better.
Like outside of Minchikov, he would be a clear tier above those other guys.
And then Minchikov, absolutely loved that pick.
Yeah,
Carlson...
For some reason, I don't really have that many. That was the one with Nazar and Dylan Guenther, I think was another one.
Dylan Guenther was the McTavish draft.
Oh, so Dylan Guenther was one that I was kind of intrigued by, but they went with.
Yeah. But the Minchikov draft, like Minchikov, I think was that was the pick that you and I were both all about and really happy that they
did. Because at 10th overall, Connor Geeky, Denton Matejchuk, Rutger McGroarty.
I remember Matejchuk was another guy we liked.
Yeah, we liked Matejchuk. I know that we liked Nazar quite a bit because he was a Mitch Brown guy. But right now in a redraft, Minchikov's going top 3.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So.
Yep. And then Carlson, I've said would have.
It was him or Fantilli.
I would have done Fantilli, but I think the Carlson pick is aging really, really, really nicely.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't really screw that one up.
Yeah, so agreed. Daniel Me said, question, why does it seem like we don't hit the net much? It feels like we take a lot of shots, but I look at shots on goal and we barely have any. Is it the quality shots or what?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like part of it is just they're not getting to the point of shooting, right? It's not even that they're missing the net. It's just that they're not creating opportunities. Like against LA, we talked about it, but they were just really not much going on. And sure, you can do what Greg Cronin says and just shoot from everywhere, but that only gets you so far. You got to create stuff. You got to have guys skating into lanes, skating to the net, and they just didn't have that the last couple games. So,
yeah,
it's kind of funny.
I also think it's a sample size thing right now.
Sure,
but I want to see more games before this becomes like a thought overall.
It's also kind of funny that when we think of skating hard, we always associate it with defense, but skating hard matters in offense too. Like you got to skate to spots, you got to win battles, and they weren't really doing that against LA. So,
Elizabeth Leo said, question, Cronin benched Zegras last year till the end of the game, but if other players make mistakes or turnovers, they don't get benched for the whole game. Thoughts, if Zegras deserves higher expectations? I mean, he did it to Cutter Gauthier.
He benched Cutter Gauthier for longer
Twice.
Than he benched Gauthier for longer than he benched Zegras. I mean, Gauthier missed the entire rest of the third. It was like 14 minutes long.
And he was benched for the last half of the second period also.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing that justice is being more evenly administered this year, and now McTavish is down on the fourth line, so maybe.
Yeah, and it was a large... Zegras was not benched the whole game either.
It was like the last 8 minutes, 7 minutes, something like that.
It was like halfway through it was the Columbus game. He got benched like halfway through the game and then didn't play the third.
I thought it was halfway through the third.
No, it was a decent amount of the game, but still,
I'm forgetting.
It wasn't the whole game. So similar situation. Logan said, what does Zellweger or Lacombe return look like if we had to trade one? I'm not advocating for it, just curious what you think.
That's such a hard one because what's a good outcome in a situation like that? Like you get a forward back? I think for me, what I would like to see is get a young forward back, or a veteran, like whatever. Just get a piece back that's going to help because I don't think getting draft picks for those guys makes much sense. So
yeah,
get someone that can help you up front.
Cool username. Okay, yes. That is a great username, actually. So do you think our players overthink things because they're scared of getting benched or getting Cronined? No,
I just think that they don't have the chemistry yet. It takes time to develop chemistry. So
yeah, and that's it for really questions. Although we've got this one from Lou. Do you want to answer this?
I don't know what it is, so you're gonna have to say it.
He asked, "Why do you people keep sending me B gifts on Discord?"
I mean, I'm not gonna out Lou on the pod, so
Lou know whys.
Lou know why. I'll leave that one be.
Do you want to just, while we're really deep in this episode and we still have 70 people here, want to do a fun little shit show thing to end the episode?
Sure. I'm searching for a blind ranking for you as we speak.
Olaf has a request of U.S. states.
Okay, what's the request?
Of a blind ranking of them.
Oh, I don't know if I can find that though.
Okay.
I guess I could just make one.
Okay, whatever. Lou said, what's the best emoji? The poop emoji.
The poop emoji?
Yeah.
That is not the best emoji. Probably laughing. Okay. That's the one I use the most.
Okay. Duck Jackonaut said, have we as a collective society begun to overrate Halloween? No,
Halloween's fun. Why do people hate fun? Can we just can we stop thinking, oh, is this overrated? Just enjoy it. Like, come on.
Yep. He also said, "What's your third favorite city in Canada?"
Third,
I've only been to one. I've only been to one, so I can't answer this.
well, my first is Montreal. My second is Quebec City, and my third is Ottawa because there's the cities I've been to. So there you go.
There you go.
Okay, I have a blind ranking for you states wise.
Okay, I got one left.
Okay.
Felix, thoughts on the pushbackers narrowly beating out Genius by 0.02 points for the win this week?
So in our Crash the Pond Fantasy Football League, I was ahead of Jack by like 70 points going to Monday Night Football, and I thought I was cruising to victory, and I just saw I barely won by 2 points. So that really scared the hell out of me.
All right, we have two actual questions before we do this blind ranking. Elizabeth Leo said, rank in a draft these following players: Carlson, Minchikov, Zegras, McTavish, Gauthier, and Seneca. Rank like what order you would take them in the Ducks' own draft.
Okay, I need to write this down. So Minchikov,
I would go Carlson 1.
Carlson, Zegras, McTavish, Seneca. Who
I
am I
would go
missing?
Carlson 1. Who do you take 2? Do you take Minchikov,
Wait,
Zegras,
hold on.
Seneca?
Hold on. What's the list? So Minchikov.
Carlson, Minchikov, Zegras, McTavish, Gauthier, Seneca.
Why isn't Drysdale on here? Is Gauthier Drysdale?
Yes.
Okay, number 1 is easily Carlson.
Yep. Number 2, do you take Minchikov?
I think so.
I think so. Number 3, is it Zegras or Seneca?
Ooh.
I would take Zegras. I think if we're doing it just like as a
prospect or as just knowing what we know now?
I guess knowing what we know now.
I think I'm taking Seneca.
Okay.
The potential of Seneca
That's fair.
is higher than what Zegras could be at this point.
That's fair. I think that those are the clear 3-4.
Yes, and then from there it's probably
McTavish and then Gauthier.
I don't know.
Flip-flop those how you want. But that's the relative.
I'm a little scarred by McTavish's start, but he did have 19 goals last season. Like I don't want to just forget what he did.
Yeah.
So.
And then Daniel Me also said early Stanley Cup predictions.
Dude, I have not paid attention to the rest of the league. I'm so just deep into the Ducks that I feel like I don't know what's going on outside of watching the Canadians. But
Winnipeg is good, so let's just say Winnipeg wins the cup.
Can we just the early season narratives are just always the worst. Like every team has a goaltending problem, every team has a power play problem. It's just like, can we stop?
Nashville being bad makes me so happy though.
But it's 5 games. Like
agreed. No, I know. It still makes me happy.
Okay. Do you want to blind rank states?
Let's do it and then we'll get out of here.
I have TikTok open on my computer, which makes me really sick.
Okay.
But this is a blind ranking state video. So I'm just going to go off of the video to figure out how to rank what I'm giving you to rank.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, blind ranking, you have to rank 1 through 5, whatever I give you, but you don't know what's coming next. Hopefully we're all clear on what that means. First up, Florida. Where are you ranking Florida? It's the Sunshine State. The Everglades.
I'll give
Disney
it a
World.
3. I'll give it a 3 because of the weather.
I've never been to Florida.
There are other things in Florida that might not make me feel that loved there. So I'll give it a 3.
What? Oh, sorry.
I'll give it a 3 because of the weather and Disney World. And yeah, we'll do that. We'll give it a solid 3.
Tampa Bay Lightning?
Sure. Take Alex Killorn back?
Alex Killorn might take that deal. Actually, that's a team that looks good. Tampa Bay. Wonder who called that. Me. New Jersey. The Garden State.
5.
The Garden State. No love for the Garden State?
5.
Why is it called the Garden State if it's just all like roads?
Are there gardens there?
There might be.
There probably are.
Oh, this is too easy. I'm pissed. California.
1, obviously. Easy. 1 with a bullet. There's no state in this country that okay, actually, crap. There's 1 state that I would put above California.
Okay, well, we're going to get through the ranking, but I'm curious what it is.
But do you want me to tell you what it is?
Well, it might come up next, so okay. I want to see you potentially be pissed.
In the continental U.S., there's no state greater than bullshit. California.
That's a bullshit take.
It is one of the. It has it has amazing beaches. It has decent to really nice weather. It has mountains. It has all the different climates. You can drive and go to so many different places. It is a fantastic place to live,
Food.
fantastic place to grow up. Great food, great culture, great everything. I love it here. Number one with a bullet.
Thank you. Okay, New York.
I'm gonna go 2,
Okay.
just because I feel like
New York
2
City.
is two. I would go better than 4, and so I'll go. I'll go New York City. New York at number 2. I don't
Okay.
know. I've been
Okay.
there. It's cool.
I've never been. And then last but not least, per your ranking, number 4, the Lone Star State, Texas.
I am perfectly happy with my ranking.
Would you flip Florida and Texas or no?
No, because the beach is in Disney World.
Yeah, Texas is very, very hot, although California's pretty hot too. So,
Yeah. But California, New York, what was it? Florida, Texas, New Jersey.
yep. Yeah, I think that's a good list.
That's a perfect list. Yeah, number 1 would have been Hawaii.
Okay.
If that is my number 1 state, but people probably shouldn't move there. Leave it to locals. So we'll just say that.
Well, people can move there, just not like hedge funds trying to buy out all the locals
Yes.
and build up,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes, absolutely beautiful though.
Okay, let's see. Last one for you. I want
Oh,
you to
great.
rank. I want you to rank foods. Let's get back to a bread and butter ranking.
Okay.
That one, the state one was too easy for me. Also, I wasn't using the app. Okay, 1 through 5. You have to rank it. You don't know what comes next. Chicken wings. I feel
3.
like that's. I feel like you're kind of learning how to game this by putting the first option in the middle.
Yes.
I'm not liking that. Number 2, or sorry, not number 2. Next up, croissant. Croissant's pretty good.
4.
4. Man, you're getting too good at this. I'm getting annoyed. Chicken quesadilla. Ooh, now you have to make a decision. Now you have to make a decision.
That's going 2.
You've been researching, huh?
No, I have not.
You've been researching. Tacos. Ooh, are you gonna give up? Give up your 1?
That's a 1.
Okay, your number 5 is ramen.
I'm okay with it.
You know, I think if I were to change anything about your list, I would flip the wings and ramen.
Yeah, I would agree. An ideal list would be tacos, chicken quesadilla, ramen, croissant.
Yeah,
wings.
I went to Buffalo Wild Wings for the first time, not that long ago. The wings were so dry, and so just like not that flavorful. It was very disappointing.
Do you know what's a very underrated way to cook chicken wings?
How?
Here's a tip for everyone: crock pot.
Ooh, I like the convenience aspect.
Crock pot, and then if you really want to get a nice crisp on them, throw them in the broiler afterwards. But also makes it
Ooh.
like fall off the meat or fall off the bone type of wing. Very
Wow,
very
look,
good.
Look at you in your chef era.
Yeah.
Did I just use a Gen Z-ism in
Probably.
your, like, why does everything have to be an era? Have you heard of this
What?
term yapping? Oh, that guy's a
No.
yapper?
I mean, that sounds like a very hockey thing to say.
No, this is just like a Gen Z or
Oh.
Gen Alpha or whatever.
I would have
term.
assumed that was someone in hockey saying that.
I'm so sick of how these people talk. Like, can't you just use normal words? Anyway. All right, folks. Well, thanks for listening. If you've made it this far, you are truly a trooper. You are one of us. But if you want to help support the podcast, we're going to get on out of here. But if you want to keep this thing going and get even more content from us, the number one way to do that is to go check out our Patreon page, patreon.com/crashthepond. If you pledge $2 a month, just $2, you get access to our patrons only exclusive Discord server. And this is where you can connect with us and talk ducks with us any time of the day, 7 days a week. There's people on there. Derek Lee, Patrick Present of the Hockey News are on there as well, so you can ask them questions directly. Great hockey conversation going on there at all hours of the day. It is a great place, and it's just $2 a month, so you're getting bang for your buck there. You can up that pledge, though, to $7.50, and on top of the Discord server, you also get access to exclusive breakdown videos, and lately, there's been a lot of power play videos. After every game, video of the power plays goes up, and we try to figure it out. Try to keep them short, 10 to 15 minutes. Great content there. And on top of that, you also get access to 2 bonus podcasts that we do. So really, you get a ton more content, and you are helping us keep this thing going. That's at patreon.com/crashthepond. Also will be linked in the show. You can also leave us a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. Those go a great long way. We really appreciate those. You can leave us feedback on Spotify. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. More videos there. Video format of the show. Check out our website, crashthepond.com. Follow us on Twitter. And on that note, man, it's kind of sad it's over, but it's been a journey. Talk to you in a week.
Bye.